Welcome to BullTV, where we are bullish on Collegeville. I'm your host, David Pickler. BullTV is a monthly show that empowers, educates, and entertains while highlighting the citizens of Collegeville who inspire and deliver solutions for a stronger community. BullTV is presented by Pickler Companies and is proudly produced by the students of Collegeville High School. We invite you to watch our show at www.bulltv.show, thebullnetwork.com, and CHS-TV 19. New episodes air on the second Sunday of every month at 3 p.m. Central Time. On today's show, we sit down with James Llewellyn, Town Administrator of Collegeville. Serving in this role for almost 3 decades, James has overseen an abundance of projects that have grown the town into the wonderful place we all cherish dearly. Stay tuned for this inside look at the essential role James plays, the legacy he leaves behind as he prepares for retirement, and the memories he has made along the way. Today, I'm joined by James Llewellyn. James has served as Collegeville's town administrator since 1995, marking this month as his 26th year in his role. Graduating from Mississippi State University with a degree in education, James went on to coach football and teach school for 2 years in Tupelo, Mississippi. He later worked in a private engineering firm for 3 years and received a master's degree in public policy and public administration from Mississippi State University. He served 2 years in South Haven, Mississippi as Director of Planning and Economic Development, and then worked in Germantown for 6 years, 4 years as Planning Director, and 2 years as Assistant City Administrator. He received the H.R. Houston Community Service Award from Leadership Collegeville and served as President of the Tennessee City Management Association from 2011 to 2012. In 2014, he received the Donovan Public Service Award from the Rotary Club of Memphis East and named City Manager of the Year by the Tennessee City Management Association. James is married to Lauren McBride and has 3 children, all of whom attended Collegeville schools from kindergarten through high school. James, thank you for joining us on BullTV.
Thank you, David. Thanks for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you here. Now, James, we're going to start you off the same way that we do with everyone. And, of course, our wonderful mayor was our very first guest, and so we're thrilled to have you. But in 3 words, who is James Llewellyn?
In 3 words, I would have to say I don't know.
Okay, that's honest. I like that. Through the week, I'm this nerdy workaholic running around town hall, confusing everyone and obsessing over everything. And then on the weekend, I'm just kind of a normal guy who mows my own grass and tries to get out and play golf occasionally and do what my wife tells me to do around the house. That's a very important role. So we will go along with that one. Now, James, we just talked about this wonderful background that you've had. How did you get involved in municipal government?
That's a long story, but I think it started with, as I was working for the engineering company, we did a lot of interaction with county government, with state government, and the city of Ripley I was working in at the time. And I had the opportunity to go back and get my master's degree, and so I focused on public policy and public administration with my master's program and began working immediately out of college with the city of South Haven. It was kind of an accidental.
Wow, that's great. How did these previous experiences really help prepare you for a role in city management?
I think it would probably be easier to ask or to change the question to what prepared me.
Okay.
And I think failure, growing up in a small town, growing up around old country farmers, and then growing up in a large family. They taught me a lot of the soft skills you need to get along with people, and so much of my job is how to relate with people and how to get along with people. I think the experiences that best prepared me for the job that I do today, obviously working in South Haven and Germantown and city planning, prepared me for this job. But teaching and coaching straight out of college, coaching is about organization. It's about strategy and developing strategies and that sort of thing. But also coaching has a lot to do with time management and managing what you have and managing your resources. Coaching taught me a lot about managing and organizing people because it's not just about putting a team together with a good game plan. You've also got to have a good team around you of coaches and managers. You've got to have equipment managers are just as important as assistant coaches. And in teaching, a lot of my job is about working with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and helping facilitate decision making. And it's also about working with the community and understanding the issues that are good for the greater good of Collierville. And so teachers understand every day it's about taking the complex and trying to make it simple so that you can work with the community and work with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen on some of those complex things. Town government can be a complex business. It's a lot of moving parts and it's a lot of complicated mechanics that go into the day-to-day operations.
You know, it's interesting that you talk about making sure that everyone understands their role and the importance of every role. And you talked about an equipment manager. And I'm sure you remember the pretty famous example about 30 years ago, there was a Super Bowl where the star running back, Thurman Thomas of the Buffalo Bills, was not able to go into the game at the beginning because he couldn't find his helmet. So managing the details can be very important, can't it?
You do, and that's part of what I do is obsess over all the details.
Absolutely. You know, you went through an awful lot in talking about some of the the people who are involved and some of the attention to detail. Most people don't really understand a lot of the details that go into city management and that profession. Tell our viewers a little bit about your job and about what a day in the life looks like for a town administrator.
Well, the first response is there's never 2 days alike, but it starts out early in the morning when everything's quiet. You have to have time to try to plan out your day and plan out your week and make sure you've got a list of all the things that need to be done. Then 8 o'clock happens and then you get trapped in a pinball machine. And you just kind of bounce around all day and take care of the things that pop up. Then when things quieten down at the end of the day, you go back to planning and organizing and preparing for the next day and whatever that day is going to be like. But it feels a little bit chaotic, but you do find time during the day to actually work on the stuff you should be doing.
I think a lot of us in business understand that. What was it that Mike Tyson said? Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the nose.
Exactly.
And some days it feels that way, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, you know, when I think about your role and your job, it seems to me, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, is that your primary responsibility really is to balance the needs of Collierville's residents and needs and wants with budgetary reality. And when you think about how you have to try to balance these things, what do you enjoy most about that process of working through people as they come to you with these needs, these wants, desires?
That's probably something you could relate very well to. It's usually about, when you talk about trying to balance budgetary realities, it's more than likely the problem in front of you is about trying to be able to do something you probably don't think you're able to do. Mm-hmm. And so what I find interesting about it and what I like about the process and the challenge is the challenge of being able to find a way to do something you probably can't do otherwise. And so what I enjoy about it and the rewarding part of it is to start with something that that's a challenge that you most likely aren't in a position to be able to do, and try to figure out a way to make it happen, to try to figure out a way to pay for it, because almost everything I deal with has got a price tag associated with it. But to figure out how to make it work. And when you can make it work, those are the few good moments that you get.
I can imagine that'd be very rewarding.
It is.
You talked about the fiscal challenge. What were some of the other major challenges that you face on a daily basis in running a town like Collierville?
There are 550 employees for the town. It's a $100 million annual operation, and there's just so many different moving parts, and there's so many people. And first and foremost, it's managing and organizing the people, and so part of the process is, and part of the rewarding part of it is working with the people that you work with on a day-to-day basis and managing their priorities and helping them to accomplish what they're supposed to accomplish on a day-to-day basis, and working with that team around you to make sure that they have what they need. But, you know, 1 minute you're talking about a problem in the fire department, the next minute you're talking about a sewer problem, the next minute you're talking about maybe very serious police matter, the next minute you're talking about someone who wants to sue you for something. And so I go from in the morning from talking to, you know, employees, landscape crews, police officers, firemen, lawyers, and so it's a lot of different problems with everything from very simplistic to very complicated, and from simple problems to potential legal issues that could cost the city millions. You know, so it's you never really know what a day in the life really is going to be.
So you haven't had your first boring day yet, right?
No, I keep waiting for a boring day, but there's not any.
Well, with so many different things going on every day, and you look back over the past 25, 26 years, what would you say is the greatest lesson that you've learned in this role?
Don't ever get married. So a lot of what I do, the role is about facilitating decisions. It's about, my job is to analyze problems and to help the Board of Mayor and Aldermen find solutions. And so one of the most important lessons and what I preach daily to the other department heads is don't get married to an outcome. We start sometimes with what we want the solution to be. And if you want that solution to be there, you try to find a way to make that be the solution you want. We're advisors, and our job is to provide the data, the information the Board of Mayor and Aldermen needs to make decisions. And we have to let the answer be what the answer has to be. I try not to have an opinion about the outcomes because I've got to be analytical. It's got to be a validated empirical answer and not what we want the answer to be. Department heads, they can fall into that trap, and I can easily fall into that trap. You want this outcome so bad that you want the data to support the outcome. Board of Mayor and Aldermen, all elected officials do. They want an outcome really bad, and sometimes... Come
on, James, just make it happen.
It's just not, yeah. Sometimes you just shouldn't do it. Sometimes it's just not the solution. Sometimes it's just not best for the community, or it's not what the greater good of the community needs. So I say that a lot, you know, and I think that's one of the most important things, and maybe one of the reasons that I've been successful is I tell the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, these are the facts, this is the information you need. You may not like it, but this is the facts, and it's not my job to you know, make the solution be what it is. The solution has to be what it has to be.
Well, you know, they always talk about that, you know, people always, you know, come up as they begin to learn and you develop knowledge. But after years, hopefully you develop wisdom.
Right.
And I would say that definitely is a great example of wonderful wisdom of don't get married to a solution or an outcome. You know, you've seen a lot happen over, you know, 3 decades. You served under 3 mayors. You've seen Collierville's population skyrocket. What's it been like being in the role that you've been in to experience and watch Collierville grow into really one of the premier communities in the entire state of Tennessee, if not in the entire southeastern part of the United States?
I don't know how many different adjectives to use, but it's just been amazing. And when I hear someone say something like you just said about being a premier community, that's where it all comes back, and that's where my reward comes from, and that's what the payback is. To have been able to be on the front row and watch Collierville unfold for the last 27 years and to go through that process. So many things that have happened over the last 27 years that have shaped us into what we are today. And to have had the privilege of being in that front row seat to watch it unfold and to be a part of it is amazing, and it's something that I'll relish for the rest of my life. And you know, I'll look back on all of those days and all of those things that happened and just say, wow.
Well, I think wow is a very good adjective to add to that. Under your leadership, Collierville was able to develop their very first ever comprehensive land use plan. And it really helped the town transform itself from a developing rural community into a cosmopolitan suburb and really a regional center for commerce and innovation. Talk to me a little bit about the process of creating this long-term land use project and plan.
First, I'm going to soak in all those nice things you just said about the town to talk about what a great town it is. When I came to Collierville, in the 90s, Collierville was going through unprecedented growth. We see the growth that we have today, but around 96 or 97, we built 1,200 new homes one year. We're building about 200 a year now.
Wow.
And so we were going through this explosive growth, and our meetings were contentious, and there were a lot of people at all of our Plan Commission meetings, Board of Mayor and Aldermen meetings. And if you sat and listened to what people were saying, it was all about this big debate over what Collierville was going to be. And I think people had a fear that Collierville was going to be a poorly planned, overgrown city with congestion and all the bad things that come with unmanaged growth. And so part of the issue, the biggest part of my job, was talking with the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and talking about the need for a comprehensive plan, a need for a roadmap that we could stick to, a plan that we could put out to the community, and anyone looking to, whether it was open a business or buy a home in the community, anyone looking at Collierville could say, this is what Collierville is going to be. This is their plan, and this is what I'm buying into. And so the hardest part of that work, if you will, was getting community leaders, business owners, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and major developers and property owners to understand the value of that roadmap. Mm-hmm. And then it was just city planning 101. Then it was just bringing a lot of people together and working on the plan. But when we published the plan, and when we began to show fidelity to the plan, when we started to say no to things that were not consistent with the plan, our meetings began to be so much better, so much more relaxed, and I think people in the community started seeing that Collierville was committed to good growth, and that we're committed to managing the town well. And I think a lot of the contentiousness of all those meetings started to go away. And then I think we really did start to get attention from the rest of the world that, hey, Collierville is going to be a really nice community, and it's going to be a good place to invest.
I could not agree more. I know when I made my decision to invest and build my business out here, just in the past 15, 16 years, it's been incredible being a part of this amazing community. And again, I think they always say success has many fathers, and failure can be an orphan. And but there's an awful lot of people who we can say thank you. But certainly, I think that having the vision to create a plan that people can build around and can embrace and see that kind of planned, smart growth is so important. So I really, again, congratulate you and all the people who are involved with that.
Well, can I tell you a little side story?
Please.
So that's one of the things, you moving your business out here, that's one of the things I get a kick out of. Because I worked in Germantown for 6 years. And Germantown's a great city, and they're well planned, and I learned from that. And Germantown's this awesome place. So when I came to Collierville, when somebody from Germantown moved to Collierville, I said, yay. So that was kind of a notch in my belt that I could attract people from Germantown.
There you go. It works. Now, when you talk about the role of all these various organizations, let's talk a little bit about the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, because obviously, they play an enormous role in this town. What do you see as the role of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in building this type of success we've had in Collierville? And how does that impact your job?
Well, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have everything to do with what the town is and what it will be. Everyone who is elected to the board over the past 27 years has ultimately adopted the town's plan and the town's vision, and they buy into it, and they embrace it because anytime there is an election, you can undo it. Mm-hmm. As you well know, leadership can do anything they want to, and they can take the town anywhere they want to take it. So it's, having the Board of Mayor and Aldermen embrace the plan and adopt the plan and move us forward under that plan is extremely important. The role of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen is to govern, is to provide direction, and to endorse where they want the city to go. They have all the power they need to change the direction of the town in any way they want to. And so I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the town, and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen don't get involved with HR decisions and nuts and bolts of things. But the role of governing is infinitely more important than the role of running the town every day.
But you have to have both.
Yes, you've got to have great leadership in both positions.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about, you just shared a little bit about the friendly competition, or at least the friendly relationship between Collierville and Germantown. And I know that you work with leaders from the other jurisdictions, the other town administrators. Tell me a little bit about those relationships and that process of working together as each of you are trying to accomplish your individual objectives.
The great thing about city government is that there's no competition between cities. Now, if you're in a business, you can't call your competition and say, how did you do this? I talk regularly with Patrick in Germantown and Mark Brown in Bartlett and Kathy Durant in Arlington, but I also talk with Kirk Bednar in Brentwood and Mark Watson in Oak Ridge, and on and on. I talk to city managers every day, and you've got that group of people that if you've got a problem, you can call them up and say, have you ever handled this? Have you ever had to deal with this? And they can tell you how to solve that problem. Mm-hmm. So we talk a lot back and forth on municipal issues. And I also try to talk with them frequently, because if there's a problem in their city, there's a really good chance it'll be on my doorstep within a week or a month or whatever. So whatever they're struggling with, I want to know, because at some point I'll probably be struggling with the same thing. And obviously, I talk to David Bradford at the County Commission a lot, and Senator Paul Rose and Representative Kevin Vaughn regularly. You have to stay in the know. You have to know what's coming next. And one of the responsibilities of my job is to make sure the Board of Mayor and Aldermen know what's coming next, what the next big issue is. what we need to be prepared for.
Fantastic. You know, we've talked about a lot of the challenges. Tell me a little bit about how your role as town administrator was affected by the pandemic, and what were some of the important lessons that you learned as we all worked together through that experience, I guess we can say.
Well, let me just say, it was hard. It was a challenge that none of the city managers that I mentioned before, and Eric Stuckey and Franklin and those guys, we all talked regularly, and we were looking for solutions, and no one had solutions.
Right.
No one had answers. We didn't know how to manage this. Managing a crisis is getting your arms around and understanding the problem and understanding all the implications that are about to follow. And so every day, I spent every day on the phone constantly with people. What about this? What about that? You know, going back and forth with everyone, looking for how to manage this crisis. And so what I learned was the importance of planning, the importance of being prepared, and the importance of having a great team of people around you. Because in any crisis, that's when people have to go to work, and that's when the people around you have to go do their job, and everyone has to perform well. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson learned. But how it affected us was, I mean, it changed all of us. I think every city manager in the state say it changed them, it changed their city. We had to make decisions in the early days of the pandemic about closing businesses. And my phone rang constantly from a business asking, could they be considered essential? And can I stay open? Can I stay closed? Those were some gut-wrenching days because, you know, ultimately, we didn't have the best criteria, in my opinion. We didn't have the best criteria for establishing what's essential and what's non-essential.
Right.
And no one really gave you, we didn't have from the state or the federal government, we didn't have a specific checklist, you know, and so it was, well, I do this, I provide this, and the community needs this essential resource. So businesses were just, at the time, I think they felt like they were fighting for their lives, and I think they probably were. And so it was a tough few days working with businesses and telling businesses they had to shut down. Businesses wanted answers, they wanted solutions, and in those early days we didn't have it. And so it was some of the most challenging days of my career. Most definitely one of the biggest problems I've ever dealt with. And in many ways, I don't know what Mayor Joyner said in his interview, but in many ways, Mayor Joyner and I both had our hands tied behind us. I mean, we were given these instructions, we were given these parameters to operate from, and we were trying to understand those parameters and understand how to implement them, and trying to be consistent with what everybody else was doing. So a few tough days there, a few nights neither one of us slept very much, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know the mayor talked an awful lot about the at least weekly calls that everyone was involved in, and the frustrations about trying to get information, and the changing dynamics seemingly all the time. Well, let's change the direction to something that I know you are incredibly proud of, and that is the instrumental role, in my opinion, that you played in developing a school system for Collegeville. Talk to me a little bit, and I know you're a very modest man, but talk to me a little bit about your efforts on this front and the challenges that you faced to fulfill this great vision.
Well, I don't know how far back to go, but you were there, and we've talked about a school system in Collierville since the early 90s. When I was in Germantown, numerous meetings and efforts and attempt to create a school system. When I came to Collierville, it was widely acknowledged that the school system was the most important aspect of Collierville government, and it was the cornerstone of our success and our growth. And so, again, going back to what I said, forget what I said earlier about not getting married to outcomes, because I was married to that outcome.
There were many of us were.
So we wanted it so bad, and like you did, and we made trips to Nashville. We drove up only to have meetings canceled and have to drive back, and then to announce that the meeting had been changed to the next day and have to get up the next morning and drive back again. So we burned the road up between here and Nashville, and we had to study so many variations of how to get the school system established, and all the dynamics that went into how to line up the votes to get the General Assembly and the Senate and the governor to support it and get the votes to happen. And I will not take any credit for any of that. I'm saying that I was one of those people who were lucky enough to be on the front row and to watch that process. And I will forever be thankful for and a big fan of Mark Norris, because I got to see him work a lot of very long days, and I got to see him with his passion for getting the votes and for getting the legislation passed. And then there was one of those moments, and in my life I'll never forget. As I talked about, we talk with each other all the time. So I called Patrick Lawton and Mark Brown, and we were talking, and we said, you know, guys, we're going to have to set up a school system. And so we had this conversation about, well, how do you do that? So we went to Nashville. The three of us went to Nashville and met with the Department of Education. We went into a room, and there were a lot of staff members there and a lot of lawyers. And first I thought it was kind of strange that the three of us gathered a crowd. We went to a conference room, and there were a lot of people in the conference room. And so in the introduction, we said, well, you know, we know that we're likely going to be able to create our own school system, and we really don't know what the formula for that is. We don't know what the process is. Is there an application? Is there some paperwork that we need to know about? We don't want to get in this process and then at the end of it have a very high profile, well, you forgot to fill out this form. So we were going through that with a group of people in the room, and when we finished, they kind of looked around and said, we don't know. They said, no one's created a school system in Tennessee in 40 years.
That's right. None
of us have been here through the creation of a school. So at this moment, there is no process. We're not sure what you have to do.
I think Carroll County may have been the last one formed.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's a special district there.
And so that was one of those things that kind of, you know, it just, you walked out of the room feeling much heavier because you felt like a lot of eyes were on you, and you felt like you're supposed to know how to do this, and you have no idea what that process is going to be like. And what comes next. We had no idea what we were doing, but you know we fumbled our way through it, and it was as you said, a lot of pride in, and I will remember a lot of those days and a lot of those subcommittee meetings and transition team meetings that you'll never forget in your lifetime.
No.
And so but it may be the second most source of pride that I'll have with my tenure with the town of Collegeville.
What would be the first?
This school.
Without question.
Yeah.
I mean, what a monument to the future and an opportunity for the children of this community to be able to really achieve almost any dream that they have and fulfill the potential. It's an amazing building.
So, and that's the reason I have a lot of personal pride in that one, because John Atkin comes around and says, we need to build a new high school. And so, you know, we looked at the problem, and we looked at building a new high school. And at the time, the town of Collierville had maybe $17 or $18 million in general fund debt outstanding. And we were concerned about debt ratios and AAA bond ratings and all the things you have to have in order to be considered a AAA city, and whether or not your finances support that type of debt. And I'm working off of a ceiling of what I thought at the time was probably $30 million
Goodness.
that the bond rating agencies would be comfortable with. And so then they came around and said, well, we're going to need about $100 million. And so your financial advisor, you kind of know how that resonated with me and what went through my head at the time. And so that was it. Working on a problem that you probably weren't capable of doing, or you didn't think at the time you were capable of doing. Figuring out how to finance it and coming back and being able to build a high school that reflects this community, and that was ultimately the goal. If we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. Mm-hmm. We're going to do a high school that the community will look up to, and that everybody will look to Collierville and say, well, that's the way you do it. And so being able to do that was one of my sources of pride that I'll carry with me for a long time. And the jewel on top was, I told the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, we're going to do this because we need to do this, and it's worth it, and we're going to do what we have to do. But you need to be prepared. We're going to lose our bond rating. We're going to lose our AAA. There's no way we get to keep it. Mm-hmm. There's no way we get to take on $100 million worth of debt and keep a AAA bond rating. And I don't know if you've ever been through a Moody's rating or been before them. You know what I'm talking about. It's a lot like, to the students here, it's a lot like taking a comprehensive exam in front of the world, you know, and all the questions they ask, and you're not really certain whether you had good answers, and you're not really sure whether you passed the test or not. And then one day you get a grade in the mail, and when they contacted us and told us they were going to assign us a AAA bond rating on $100 million. It's like, wow.
Yeah, that's a big wow. As you've been talking, and I'm thinking about these students here at Collierville High School, and I'm thinking about this broadcast, and I'm thinking, what an amazing oral history that we've just been able to capture on film. That years from now, people can look back and say, this is a guy who was instrumental not only in creating this district and talking about some of the behind the scenes, but also about some of the passions and the financial maneuvering to be able to build this high school. And so I want to thank you for just sharing that history, because that's so incredibly important, I think.
Well, thank you. Those are the stories worth telling, and those are the great stories.
Those are great stories. Wow. Well, you know, we do have a few other things we want to cover. I mean, I just feel so in awe of some of the things that you've been able to do. Tell me a little bit about the role that you have played in protecting some of the historic buildings here in Collierville.
Any credit for that doesn't belong with me. It belongs with the board and a lot of people who have been working in historic preservation for a long time, and people who have understood the value of protecting the downtown and the square and the historic buildings. That is, historic buildings and historic vibe of the town is our defining icon. It's what Collierville is, and it's what people relate to, a great old city. Mm-hmm. And so my role had more to do with establishing the policies for historic preservation, with establishing the guidelines in the historic district and creating the districts and that sort of thing. And then you just give those regulations and you give that yardstick to the Historic District Commission, and they go do great work with it.
That's fantastic. What would you say, and you've talked about so many amazing things, what would you think is the most rewarding thing about being town administrator here in Collierville?
The most rewarding thing is actually it's the special events. It's the 4th of July. it's the tree lighting on the square. It's when the concerts on the square. It's when the community comes together, and you get to see a product. Because a lot of times I don't really get to see the product of the work. But when the community comes together and you've got all the folks out there and everyone's happy and you see people mingling together and the kids running around, it's awesome. And that's when I get this sense of pride about being a part of town government, is when there's a large gathering of people out there and getting to participate in the public events. And one of the most rewarding things is all the things that my children were able to do growing up in Collegeville. It was an amazing experience for them, and that's part of the reward of having been the town administrator for so long.
Wow. In our first episode, we talked several times about having the opportunity to sit down with Mayor Joyner, and we touched a little bit on the future of Collegeville. And would you mind sharing a little bit more in depth about what you see as the vision for our town?
I think the vision for the physical appearance of the town is a lot in what you're going to already see in the roadmap for the town. I think we're going to build some even greater amenities, but I think it's not so much about a town well run. It's more about life well run, and I think the future of the town has to focus on the experience of living here. And I think we have to have a major impact on the experience people have in living and working in the community. I think that we need to build more recreational amenities, more walking trails, more things for people to do. We've got to develop a wider variety of recreational programs, because the heartbeat of the city is people coming together, and that's what builds community, and it's what makes a great community. A great community is defined by what it feels like and the experience that you have as you go about your daily life. And part of building bonds is getting people out of their home, introducing them to strangers. So there's nothing like this dynamic that you see when you're standing on the sideline of a flag football game. You see parents from every walk of life, from every culture, from every economic situation. You see them running up and down the sidelines, yelling at their kids or yelling with their kids. And you see parents, while their kids are playing baseball, you see parents on the sideline talking, and you see these friendships and these bonds starting to come together. And I think that's an important role, and that's a defining focus of the town of Collegeville in the future. I think that's what makes us great, is to continue to work with strengthening the bonds of the community. We can take care of the physical. We can build the parks and we can build the fields and that sort of thing, but we've got to focus on the things that bring people together.
I love it. Yeah, you already talked about some of your fondest memories and some of the things you're most proud of. You know, obviously you have announced that you're going to be retiring, and certainly you're going to leave an incredible legacy. But what does the future look like for James Llewellyn? What do you envision in your retirement? You know that old adage, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans? That's exactly how I feel right now. And I think anytime I start to tell people what I'm going to do in retirement, I think, yeah, that'll probably last a week. But I will do something. I'll continue to work, and I'll find a way to be involved in the community. The only plan I have is in my first month off is to do nothing and see what that feels like before I make a decision on what the long-term commitment's going to be. But I'm going to travel more. I've got motorcycles, and I like to travel on the back of a motorcycle. So I think those first few days after I retire, I'm going to get on a bike and I'm going to go out west, and I'm
probably going to be gone for about 6 weeks.
All right, fantastic. I love it.
And
James Llewellyn is easy rider.
Well, we'll see how long that lasts and how long that plan actually stays into effect.
Love it. James, since we are filming inside of Collegeville High School, and we've talked about these kids already, what message would you like to have for the students when it comes to leadership?
Be a good person first. Be a good moral and ethical person. And the world has plenty of self-serving leaders. We don't need any more of those. Have integrity. Be a good person. And then read everything you can about leadership to prepare yourself for what fate throws at you. And then whatever your leadership position ends up being, whether it's running a major corporation or organization, or whether it's serving on a community group or a committee at church, work hard at it and then have the courage to do the right thing.
Great. Wow. Last question. When you reflect on your career, what would you hope to be your legacy?
I think just attitude. They pick at me at work for being obsessive compulsive over the details, but my attitude is that everything matters. If you want to be a great community, everything matters, and people aren't going to describe you as one of the premier communities in the state of Tennessee if the windows at the front of town hall are dirty. So we don't have dirty windows, and the bathrooms in the park are going to be clean. We're going to obsess over the details, and I have, but I think my philosophy is that everything matters, and do it right or don't do it. This is Collierville. We do things right. We want things to be as the better version of us as we possibly can. And so I hope maybe my attitude will stick around for a little while.
Well, I'm going to make this as a personal comment. Having known you back in your days when you were in Germantown, and observing you from afar from my role with the school board for many years, and now for the past 15 years as a business owner out here, I can say undeniably that you take care of the details and you do it right. And so, James, thank you very, very much. Thank you for joining us on BullTV and sharing your story with our viewers. Collegevillians, I believe, are blessed to have had you as their town administrator for, as you say, 27 years. We're going on 27 years. And the work that you have done has made a direct impact on our town and on all of our lives. Your passion for this special place and your dedication for moving Collierville forward is evident in the way that you do things. You walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And these are things that truly we all can be inspired by.
Thank you, David. You're way too kind. And in case anyone has any doubts, I owe all of my success to having great people around me. I've had a great team, and I've had great people to pick up the pieces. And so thank you for what you say. I really do appreciate that. But it's no one ever accomplishes anything alone.
No, we don't. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
James Llewellyn's career is a living testament to the principles of servant leadership, a philosophy wherein the person chooses to lead by placing the interests of others ahead of his or her own. Servant leaders focus on creating cultures of trust and ensuring that their organizations and communities will thrive long after their tenure is past. Servant leaders encourage diversity of thought and creativity in problem solving. They operate with an unselfish mindset and foster leadership development in others. They understand the power of truly being present when communicating with those they lead and serve. They are able stewards of the resources in which they're entrusted. Servant leaders also strive to understand and empathize with others. They bring an attitude that fosters transformative actions and integrate best practices. Servant leaders help develop incredible visions for the future of their organization and their community, and empower the stakeholders to develop the strategies and tactical actions to bring those visions to life. Our community has benefited enormously by generations of servant leaders whose dedication to Collegeville and its citizens have made our town an amazing place to live, work, and play. Our future shines brightly because of the contributions, and that is my 2 cents. We invite you to join us for our next episode as we sit down with Noel Fenderson, a local entrepreneur and businessman who is the co-owner of multiple local companies under the brand of My Town. In the show, Noel and I will discuss his organization's mission to better the lives of their employees, customers, and communities. We'll also learn about his foundation, My Town Miracles, and how this nonprofit partners with communities to provide financial assistance and resources to people and families in need of a miracle. Don't miss this inspirational episode, airing next month. Until next time, I'm your host, David Pickler. Thank you for watching BullTV, where together we deliver solutions for a stronger community.